Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started in just a few moments. We're going to let some more people arrive. Welcome. I see a few more people joining us. We'll get started in just a moment. Thank you for being here. Text your friends, tell them, remember we were supposed to go to that thing with Tourmaline? Let's see, we got a few more folks in the room. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started in just a moment. We'll give it just about another minute or so. All right, friends. Hello and welcome to Take Back the Night 2021, brought to you by the Women's Resource Center at Portland State University. Really excited for you all to be here with us tonight. My name is Alicia Howard. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the coordinator for the Sexual and Relationship Violence Response Program here at PSU. We are really excited to be in virtual community with y'all tonight. We're grateful for our own PSU students, faculty, and staff for joining us this evening. We're also glad to have family, friends, students, and colleagues from other local institutions, community members near and far, with us to come together to raise awareness and take action against sexual violence in all its forms. Feel free to take a moment to let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. Say hi. Tell us how excited you are to be here. All right, next up, I'm going to give a land acknowledgement. Portland State University is located in the heart of downtown Portland in Multnomah County. We pause to honor Indigenous people whose ancestral lands we occupy. The Multnomah, the Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of the Chinook, Tualatin and Kalapuya, the Malala, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. We also acknowledge that Portland, Oregon has the ninth largest urban Native American population in the US, with over 380 federally recognized tribes represented in the urban Portland metropolitan area. We also acknowledge the systemic practices and policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many Indigenous Native American families today. It is important that we always remember that colonialism is not only a historical artifact, it is a current, ongoing process. We are honored by the collective work of many Native nations, leaders, and families who are always demonstrating resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity. We are honored to be guests, yes, guests upon these lands. We also shoulder a responsibility to make sure our university meaningfully includes Indigenous students and supports making education relevant to their lives. We are grateful for them and continually commit ourselves to solidarity with them and other marginalized folks, especially survivors. To look up whose land you stand on, go to this website, which will be included in the chat. You can also see an interactive timeline of major historical events in the United States from an Indigenous perspective. Also, there'll be a link included in the chat. We'd like to take a moment to thank our co-sponsors for their contributions toward this year's SAM Week and our signature event, Take Back the Night. Many thanks go to the Multicultural Student Center here at PSU, as well as the Women's Resource Center at PCC Sylvania. Next, we'll have Lily talk a little bit more about our SAM poster.
Hi, y'all. My name is Lily. I'm a part of the Feminist Leadership Cohort at the Women's Resource Center, and I use she and her pronouns. And yeah, here's a little bit more about this year's poster. This year's poster was created with our theme in mind and in an effort to capture a natural element that is both beautiful, resilient, and speaks to survival: the thorns, the roots, and the blooms. Thistles were chosen to capture this, in part because of the creative ways they grow everywhere, even in the most challenging conditions. Paola de la Cruz, our selected artist, captured this beautifully. And a little bit more about the artist, Paola de la Cruz. She spent her most impressionable years in the Dominican Republic alongside the warm sun and singing wind. Upon moving to Boston at the age of 9, she was inspired by the activist movements happening around her. Think of the Romanticism art movement featuring Black and brown folks. Picture ethereal Black and brown femmes bathing in the warmth of nature and her motherly embrace. Paola interweaves digital and analog media, patterns, stitching, and shaped base illustrations to evoke intimacy while challenging the themes of cultural identity and coming of age. Paola currently resides in Portland, Oregon. You can see more of her work at her website, which will be added in the chat. And then just a little bit more about the Women's Resource Center. Many of you are familiar with PSU's Women's Resource Center, but for those that aren't, we'd like to introduce ourselves. So the WRC is a department housed within PSU's Student Affairs Division. We offer programming to support the personal, professional, and academic development of our students. We have support services and leadership opportunities. We also create events and spaces for students to engage in community, learn, and celebrate feminist identities. And Alicia will be talking about the theme next.
Our theme is inspired by an excerpt from the poem Paul Robeson, written by the late poet Gwendolyn Brooks. We are each other's harvest. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. These words were described as a warning, a reminder of the power that exists in the collective work of all who've come before us, are here now, and will be here long after. It is through resistance, resilience, and interdependence that we dare to write, sing, dance, build, weave, dream, and breathe pathways that lead us to a future where we can exist wholly and fully, where there is dignity, joy, safety, nourishment, and belonging for us all. We are each other's future. This week, we've had the pleasure of having incredible artists share their wisdom and magic related to creativity and survival. First, we had You Got This, honoring your art as an act of survival with Melanie Monasteros. Melanie Monasteros is a poet and interdisciplinary artist exploring polysensory production and somatic grief through textile. Their work considers the collective crip consciousness by connecting to marvelous bodies living with the complexity as sick or disabled. A Black creator of Taino and Arawak heritage, they live in Treaty 1, Winnipeg, MB, home of the Métis First Nation and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Dene, Creek, Dakota, and Oji Cree nations. In 2019, Melanie was awarded the JRG Emerging Artist Award for their continued pursuit, integrating technology and accessibility through film via their series Ancestor Radio. Melanie's work was hosted by Gallery 1CO3, Window Gallery, and the C2 Center for Craft, Manitoba Craft Council in 2020, and can be found at the School of Art Gallery at the University of Manitoba in 2021. Next, we have the remarkable Neve with us for You Are an Epic, Healing with Dance, Story, and Song, a Space Odyssey. Neve is a Nubian, Indigenous, Sudanese, Southwest Asian, and Celtic, Germanic, American enchantress of queer joy and consequences. Red Black American, Indigenous, Arab, queer, multi-gender femme, trans disabled, performing artist freak. He is a 2020 Pina Bausch Fellow, an award-winning actor and filmmaker, a founder and member of Access Centered Movement, and its Connected Coast Salish Territories-based dance, theater, film production company. Mouthwater and the president-elect / vice president of the Dance Educators Association of Washington. They are currently an arts writer and contributing poet at the South Seattle Emerald, and has also been published in Curve Magazine, The Black Scholar, Everyday Feminism, Model View Culture, Plenitude Magazine, and Maximum Rock and Roll, among others. So much, right? Thanks again to everyone who attended. Here's to Lily to give us a quick history of Take Back the Night.
Yeah, so each year at PSU, Sexual Assault Awareness Month, or SAM, centers the voices of survivors across campus and in the larger Portland community. In 1973, Take Back the Night was birthed by folks in San Francisco protesting the serial murders and violence against women of color in Los Angeles. This effort has and continues to work toward eliminating sexual and domestic violence in all forms through providing a space for awareness, community, and action. The Women's Resource Center at Portland State has hosted Take Back the Night since 1999. Collectively, we welcome you to help center how our futures are all interconnected, and that a truly violence-free culture must offer safety, dignity, and access for us all. We have immense gratitude to the many folks on campus who've helped make Take Back the Night and SAM possible over the years. So now let's take a look back at Sexual Assault Awareness Month and Take Back the Night at PSU through the years.
For all of you, this is an incomplete catalog of ways a night can be taken. Taken with rope. The way you tie yourself to me, the way you desecrate the trees, taken as a public message. Taken automatically, routinely, like a debit withdrawn from an unaccountable account made just for that purpose, theft. Taken with itself, as if violence is beautiful and means that we're wanted and needed, worthy of nothing more. Taken seriously by committees and boards whose liability long ago eclipsed their love. Taken for a fool or as a school where you learn that what you thought is unaffordable. Taken as a screen or a jumbotron protecting the team and replacing the stars. Taken in the secret lining of cars and the stickered walls of bars, erstwhile escape routes. Taken as a given, as if you already gave it, just by being here, living on the blood of slaves already. Taken by surprise, because a training in lies is a training in being lied to. Taken by force, as in, of course, your body is firewood. But what if we raise the stakes on take and took a look at what a landscape of taking makes? Of waiting until we just can't take it anymore, of taking it until that moment comes, internalizing a logic of accumulation and domination, of take and take back, and take away the one, and carry the burden into future generations. What about make? Could we make back the night? Remember our darkness? Acknowledge the dark science of listening and breathing, of love like a water-quenched plant. If we made back the night, would we make it of singing our hearts out of leftover honey jars, out of glittered harmonicas, out of what you yourself are made of, mitochondria and time? May we all make it back, make it home, make it worthwhile, make it plain. See you there.
Thank you, Lily. Hello, everyone. My name is Corey Leda, and I am the Assistant Director of the Women's Resource Center, and I use she and they pronouns. I am so very, very excited to welcome and introduce our amazing keynote speaker, Tourmaline. Tourmaline is an artist, archivist, activist, and filmmaker who lives and works in New York. She has received widespread recognition for the impact of her work, including being named one of Time Magazine's 100 Most Influential People of 2020. Building upon her longstanding experience as a community organizer, her research mines archival sources tracing historical lineages of marginalized and excluded communities. By centering and inscribing Black, Brown, trans, and queer historical figures and narratives, she directly challenges dominant cultural histories and storytelling. Her work honors and links antecedents of resistance with current possibilities for liberation, and offers models in which to broadly imagine and thrive within self-actualization. Her work is included in the permanent collection of the Brooklyn Museum, Brooklyn, the Museum of Modern Art, New York, the National Gallery of Victoria, and Melbourne, and the Tate, London. She's been included in many exhibitions and screenings, including the New Museum, the Brooklyn Museum, the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Museum of Contemporary Art Chicago, among others, and has been featured in numerous publications, including Art Forum, Frieze, the New York Times, the New Yorker, Art News, and Vogue. This year, she opened her first solo gallery exhibition of films and self-portrait photographs entitled Pleasure Garden at Chapter New York, which has been met with critical acclaim. With extreme excitement and appreciation, I give it to you, Tourmaline, to begin.
Hi. I am so honored to be here and filled with so much appreciation for all of the work that went into creating the space for tonight and the series of powerful workshops and events that led up to tonight. I am going to do a few things, and one of them is share two films, Happy Birthday, Marcia and Salacia, and then speak a little bit about them in the context of what we're gathered here as my friend. I've known Alexis Pauling-Gumbs for like 20 years. So as my friend Alexis would say, make back the night, take back, make back the night. So the first film I'm gonna share is Happy Birthday, Marcia. It is about the artist and activist and performer, Marsha P. Johnson, who was instrumental in making back and taking back the night of the Stonewall riots. It was directed by me and my dear friend Sasha Wurtzel, with cinematography by Arthur Jaffa, starring, there's just like a list of beautiful people who make work with me. Maya Taylor stars as Marsha P. Johnson. And then I'm going to share Salacia, which is an experimental film that I made about the Black trans night maker, night taker, Mary Jones, who was a New Yorker living in the 1830s in New York City, was arrested for stealing someone's wallet and sentenced to prison. All this playing out in a landscape where Black New Yorkers were creating a place of refuge and marronage where they could be together without being taken back into slavery at a time when slavery was still legal in New York and throughout the US. And Black people in New York were regularly kidnapped. So just this long lineage and legacy of night making and night taking. And that place was called Seneca Village. So I'm going to share those two. I'm going to read a little bit, and then we can have a conversation, ask questions, breathe together, and be together in our night making and taking.
Is the camera rolling? In 1963, when I came to 42nd Street and I was the Butch Queen, and I didn't know nothing about wearing dresses or drags or anything. I went there, and honey, these queens start calling me Marshall. And I was just empty, they would just call me Marshall, and I was gagging. And then they start calling me Marsha. And I liked it so much. I said, that's who I'm gonna be. I'm gonna be Marsha.
Come on, Marsha, you know you can't stand here. Move on.
What's with the radio? It's for my party. You better come, girly. Yeah, I'll be there. Junior, you coming to my party?
I wouldn't miss it for the world.
You got change for a starving actress.
I have these for the Queen of Christopher Street.
Hey, doll. Those from me?
I said, are those for me?
Oh, I think every day's my last one. I'm just in this world for the party. After the party's up, I'll be gone. Back across the River Jordan. Out of here. I mean, I don't never know what to do, Andy. You know, I'm always getting confused. My computer gets all tangled up.
But you always seem to have it together.
I try.
I don't know how you do it. Every time I see you at the 2020, you're there and you're like the most together person. You're just there and you're so together.
It's expected.
That's true.
Hello.
Where are you?
Hello?
My party?
Fuck! Marsha, your party. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Let's go out. Come on, everyone's going to Stonewall. Washington Square Bar got raided.
Everyone was supposed to be coming to my party.
Let me finish, girlie. Everyone's going there, and I talked to Ed, and he said that he would let you perform there.
All right.
On occasion.
Well, bitch, I better see you cheering then.
Of course, Marsha. I love you. Happy birthday.
Hey, Marsha girl. Where you sneaking off to?
What do you want, Junior?
You think I'm not gonna follow the most beautiful girl in the world down Christopher Street?
If I was so beautiful, you would have came to my party.
Marsha, I made you something. Get in the damn car, Marsha. Let me give you a ride. Where you headed?
Stonewall. You wanna come?
Baby, I'm going where you're going.
Hey, Marsha, where we headed, girl?
I'm about to be on stage, darling.
I want to come.
Don't forget about me, Marsha girl.
What do you want?
We want to come in.
You can't come in here dressed like that. You know, we got rules.
They let you in.
What'd you say?
Of course I can come in. I'm performing tonight. It's gonna be legendary.
Fine, just keep to the back.
In case you didn't get the message, but I can see you did, because you all are the message, we have someone here that's gonna sum it all up for you again. She's the queen of this here island. She's the saint of Christopher Street. It's Miss Marsha P. Johnson.
If I wanted to be a saint, I would have died for our sins. Honey, I would be a zombie. I'd have turned my sisters in. If I wanted to be a saint, I would sleep when it was dark. I'd be loyal to the law and not the queens in the park. If I wanted to be a saint, I just prayed to the pigs. I'd say, yes, Mr. Officer, instead of fuck you, that's my wig. If I wanted to be a saint, I just give them my damn clothes. Instead, I'll throw them in the Hudson, toss Daddy Neptune my pantyhose. I'm not saying that it's easy to shine, to love, to twirl. I'm not saying it don't hurt to be awake in this world. But the river keeps on flowing, the water's cool, deep and blue. That river keeps on glowing, shining light right back at you. So stay awake, my darlings. It's all we've got to do.
And I'm lost in the music. Honey, I've been lost in the music since when?
About 74.
No, I got lost in the music in 1963 at Stonewall. No, it's Stonewall, 1967. I got lost. In oh my dear, Stonewall. I got lost in the Stonewall. Heard it through the grapevine.
Marvin.
1969. I got lost in the music and I couldn't get out. I still can't get out of the music.
Earth to your majesty. You want a drink or not, huh? Because you're holding up the line. What the hell am I paying him off for?
That's my way, that's my way, that's my way.
Is that for me?
During the daytime, they call us fags and freaks. But at nighttime, we get even. At nighttime, we freak on them.
They say the people could fly. Say that long ago in Africa, some of the people knew magic. They would walk up on the air like climbing up on a gate. They flew like blackbirds over the fields. Black shiny wings flapping against the blue up there.
Every time I look at that damn river and meditate on the river. You gotta keep fighting, girl, because it's not time for you to cross the River Jordan. This is River Jordan. The Hudson River. You gotta keep fighting, girl.
This ain't for the faint of heart, darling.
anything. We want to. We can be anything we want to be. 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 We can be anything we want to be.
Thank you. So I noticed there's some questions in the chat and that are so great. And I'm going to read a little bit and then actually, because these questions came up so quickly that I'll just answer the questions first. So the first question is, where did y'all find this amazing footage of Miss Marsha? So I've been Marsha's archivist unofficially for, over a decade now. Much of what kind of exists in the public sphere of Marsha is actually things that I uploaded and put online. And so it was lots of conversations with people who, before anyone was talking about Marsha, we're talking about Marsha, or just were friends and family of Marsha, who I got to know over a course of like 20 years of doing organizing work in New York City. And how did I get into filmmaking is another question. And that came out of my community organizing work. So the first film that I ever took part in was called Taking Freedom Home, that I shared early in a workshop today. And it was a group of us who were low income or formerly low income, queer, trans, gender nonconforming, disabled people, mostly people of color, talking about our lives. And so, and then that was like 2006 that we started doing that. And then I remember in that moment, I was kind of starting to say, it was a really different moment politically and culturally, where there were just, the term trans woman of color wasn't really even a term that people were using. And so I felt so called to, in a kind of spiritual sense, start storytelling about people who came before me. So the first way of doing that, I made a film with my friend Miss Major, who is a Black trans elder who was fought back at Stonewall alongside people like Marsha. And it's called The Personal Things. And it's about those small everyday acts of resistance and refusal that that really transform and change the world. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I started getting into filmmaking. It's really just as community storytelling, which leads me to some of the words that I want to offer tonight for Take Back the Night. Which are, my heroes have always been taking back the night. The nighttime is where we get to be our freest selves, the witching hours, the moment when the stars come out and everything celestial and otherworldly suddenly feels within reach. The hours that have been home to park cruising, street hustling, curling up with a loved one and drifting off to sleep. Noise demos outside city jails to let our friends and loved ones know we're still here. Dancing and sweating at queer clubs and sex parties, watching the sunrise over the East River or sunset on the Hudson River, communing with those who came before us. Stonewall happened at night. The New York University sit-ins that birthed the street transvestite action revolutionaries happened at night. Freedom dreaming happens at night. Keeps us each other safe happens at night. Keeping each other safe happens at night. Marsha P. Johnson was fiercely protective of everyone she loved. They called her Saint Marsha, But just because she was a saint didn't mean she wouldn't fight back at night. Before I started making films, I was a community organizer for well over a decade. It was through community organizing with Black, trans, queer, gender-conforming, and disabled communities and friends that I learned about freedom dreaming, a term my friend and former teacher, Robin D.G. Kelley, wrote a book about, which has been instrumental in my understanding. Freedom dreams are born when we face harsh conditions never intended to keep us alive and thriving. Not with despair, but with deep knowledge that these conditions will change, that a world filled with softness and beauty and care, one in which we have access to housing, to love, to joy, to keeping each other protected, is not only possible, but inevitable. Freedom dreaming starts with asking questions, often the same question, over and over, allowing ourselves to get deeper each time. Coming out of the long traditions of freedom schools, collective education programs formed during the civil rights and Black Power movements that my family is very much a part of, as a counter to the public education steeped in white supremacy that many people in the US received. As an organizer, I focused on 3 questions from the freedom schools. What does the dominant culture have that we want? What does the dominant culture have that we don't want? What do we have that we want to keep and make more of? To ask these questions is to give ourselves permission to dream and to speculate, to come up with the most extravagant desires we can imagine, or to appreciate the simplest things that are already part of our daily lives. This kind of dreaming is what allows me to slow down and access in gentle moments when I would otherwise feel overwhelmed by the unrelenting societal conditions we face. Conditions shaped by anti-Blackness, gender policing, sexual violence, financial instability that many of us have to navigate every day. And this kind of dreaming is what allows me to access and appreciate all the ways we've already created the world that we want, are constantly co-creating it with one another in pockets and space of time that belong to us. Freedom dreaming isn't just about the big things, the huge world changes that we're manifesting in our movements, like police and prison abolition, free universal healthcare and gender self-determination for all, or gender collective indeterminacy. It's also about this everyday things we're already doing, the ways that we show up for one another when we make sure each one of us has safe rides home, regardless of whether we're sober, wildly high, or anywhere in between. Freedom dreaming is telling our friends, yes, wear that sheer bodysuit, you look amazing, and I'll be next to you the whole time that we're at the party so you feel comfortable and safe. Freedom dreaming is shyly getting spanked at the play party, letting yourself exist in the fullness of your desires and fantasies. Freedom dreaming is the 3 a.m. phone call to your friend when you can't sleep, which they pick up because they pick up for you regardless of the time. Freedom dreaming happens in all the big and small ways that we take back the night for ourselves and each other. That, as Alexis Pauline Gumbs said, we make back the night. And we are making it, taking it back, because nighttime has always been ours. Like Marsha said, during the daytime, they call us fags and freaks, but at nighttime, we get even. At nighttime, we freak on them. Taking back the night is just returning to what's always been true. We can shine in the darkest places, and no one can take that from us. Thank you. So now if there are any questions, any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
It looks like there are a few in the Q&A. Those are some maybe simpler questions, like how did you get into filmmaking? So you can feel free to answer those now. And then we also have questions for our question and answer portion. But yes, feel free.
Yeah, these are such brilliant questions. So I wanted to say that, so the text of Salacia, the opening words are from the storybook called The People Could Fly, which are stories from Gullah Geechee land in the Carolinas, places of Black Maranaj. And Virginia Hamilton wrote a children's book called The People Could Fly that collected many of these stories. And then in the process of making the film, I got permission from Virginia Hamilton to incorporate this beautiful text that really speaks so much to what we do at night, which is be the fullness of ourselves and fly or freak out or, feel our abundance. And there's a question about where do I find my abundance? And, I think that in everyday actions. So whether it's getting more rest, giving myself a break, being nicer to myself, noticing how my thoughts feel about myself and other people, giving other people a break, accepting help and support and care. That's, I think, such a big tenet of many of us who are part of disability community. It's like, how do we receiving care is such a gift that we're offering. Receptivity is a gift. There's so much abundance. So I think that's such a great question. Are there any filmmakers that inspire me? So many. One second. I would say Julie Dash and Arthur Jaffa are two filmmakers that have been really instrumental in coming up as a filmmaker. Dee Reese, who I worked for on Mudbound, is a really talented, incredible filmmaker. I think part of what making something like Taking Freedom Home, which was directed by my dear friend Kekendo Marungi, who passed away a few years ago, showcases is that, and you can watch that film on YouTube, that so many of us are filmmakers. Like, we can be filmmakers with our phones. So much of the work that I make now, I'll hire a cinematographer, but I'll also shoot part of it on my phone, and it's a real reminder of the abundance that we have, that we're making art all the time, whether or not other people recognize it. So, yeah, other questions? So I'm just scrolling down the Q&A. What role has Creative Journey had on your healing? It's really been instrumental. I think that many of us who are part of collective social movements for healing and are also cultural organizers see that there isn't a binary between the two, that they're so often going, they're co-creating each other. So I think that's such a powerful question that really brings that up. So when I'm filmmaking, I'll direct, and what that means, each film is kind of different. For the two that I shared tonight, I'll write a script, and then I'll try to bring as many people into the project as possible. So I'll say, this is the story, and these are the kinds of shots that I want, because how you frame something really changes the quality or the feeling of the image, right? So having a wider shot that shows more people might have a different feeling than in Happy Birthday Marsha when you just see Marsha's eyes, or having the camera above someone looking down might be a different kind of feeling than when the camera is low to the ground and we're looking up at the person and seeing their power. So those are kind of decisions that I make all the time about the impact that I want the character to have on screen, because so often, when I started making film, there wasn't like people weren't aestheticizing the power and the beauty of and the pleasure and the joy and the everyday actions of Black, trans, non-binary people in the nighttime. That just wasn't happening. And so to me, the kinds of decisions about lighting and editing were really important for me to be very deliberate in. So that's such a great question. Collective freedom dreaming, I mean, you said it exactly. We're doing it. Black Lives Matter, the work around centering the ease and the power and the rest. Like I think about Nap Ministries. I think about many people in this moment reminding each other that it's so important for us as Black people to get to luxuriate in this moment, to replenish ourselves, to dream of ease, of moving about, of being able to show up for one another in an abundance of ways. And so part of that, there's a question about community. What does it mean to create community? And to me, that's something that's so at the forefront of my practice as an artist, community and coming together in the midst of a mess of a thing and finding each other, finding ways to show up and show out and, like remind. So that could be like donating to people's bail funds, donating to people's commissaries. That could be like calling each other a Lyft or a car back from a party. Parties aren't really happening right now, at least where I am, but that would be a way of really building community. It could be sharing each other's GoFundMe or filling it. And then those are kind of like interpersonal. So a lot of times when I was organizing in a different kind of way, we used to talk about the 5 I's of oppression. So it would be ideological, institutional, interpersonal, internalized, and isolation. So showing up to undo or transform the violences at each of those sites. So interpersonally, showing up to make sure that someone's safe by like calling them a car or walking them home or texting them when they get home. Institutionally can mean like having community look at systemic transformation, whether it's as a student at your college or when someone who's like part of a museum setting or your job. For me, it was working specifically on getting access for my community for welfare and healthcare and stopping prisons from being built in New York City and the expansion of the police. All of these things are important in places where coalition and community building really matter. So, yeah. So I didn't go to school for filmmaking. It's something that, and I didn't study film theory. So there's a question about how did you learn about film theory? I didn't learn about film theory. That's not something that's part of what I did. I was making films with my community. And that's, before there were even iPhones, just on like the cheapest camera that you could have. So that was our film theory. It was like, it was about like, let's make us main characters. That was the theory of our films. Like, we deserve to be taking up space in art, and yeah, like that was the theory of our work. And so then I did a deep dive. Like, I grew up going to the movies with my family, like matinees. So I grew up in poverty, and so if you went at a certain time to the movies, it was cheaper. So that was the only kind of movie that we ever went to, was the like, it was called the matinee. And so it was like just the pop culture movies that we all saw. And so there was something really profound, though, when Spike Lee's Malcolm X came out, which was 1993. And I just felt this moment where I felt myself reflected on screen in a very particular way. And I felt the kind of power of my community. I grew up, with my family involved in the civil rights movement, the Black freedom movement. My dad was in the kind of analogous to the Black Panthers in Memphis called the Invaders. So I just grew up with so much story. So there's something that I really came alive when I was going to movies, and then, but it always felt like it was something really far away, like I couldn't do until Taking Freedom Home. We made it together and we screened it for our community. That was the other thing. It's like, we get to be main characters and we also get to be the audience, because at the time when I started making work, that was not what was happening. Like, there weren't films about Black or people of color who were queer and trans, non-binary, disabled, living in poverty or had lived in poverty, for an audience of people who shared those experiences. So I remember just feeling like a revelation to have that happen.
Tourmaline, also, we can also pause if you you like. If we're needing a break, we can take a minute or two, just so that you can kind of get some air.
Thank you. These are such great questions. I'm like doing the marathon of the question, but I think taking a quick break would be great.
Yes. So everyone, we are going to take about a 2 to 5 minute break. Please take care of yourself, grab water, stretch, do whatever you need to care for yourself. And then we're going to come back and Tourmaline is going to answer some more of these questions. We're going to continue our question and answer portion of this evening. Thank you for sticking around with us. This is awesome. Having such a good time right now. But we'll see you. Let's see you back at 7:15 PST and 10:15 EST. And if you're on another time zone, I can't do that kind of math right now. So we'll see you back in a few. We'll give everyone just another minute or so to come back to wherever they are. And get in place. All right, folks. We're going to come back together. Hopefully that was enough time. We're going to continue to get into this question and answer portion. Thank you so much, Tourmaline. Like, this has been so
honored to be here.
Oh my goodness. I'm just like, you know, when you have that moment, you're like, your brain's like, yes. Oh my gosh, I don't have enough sticky notes. Like, I don't know who else is a sticky note taker.
Totally, yes.
I don't have enough sticky notes. So we've got tons of questions in the Q&A function. We also had some questions for you just while we have you here.
Of course, anything.
I think you might have answered a little bit of our first question already, just in relationship to our theme. The question was, where have you seen resistance, resilience, and interdependence show up in your life, your activist work, or your art, as I know they're all interrelated?
Yeah. So, you know, I think that so much of what my like activist and artwork has been shaped by is people showing up with and showing out for each other around like access to the everyday ease from going from one place to another, everyday like ease of like getting welfare benefits or healthcare benefits, of you know, freedom from police violence, that kind of like real every day has had such impact on who I am, and so much of that is at night. Also, you know, being able to be like find pleasure in each other, and so like nightlife and like thinking about you know, people showing up. I made a film called Atlantic is a Sea of Bones, and that was after this Lucille Clifton poem of the same name about how huge violences continue to haunt a landscape, like the transatlantic slave trade, well after they're supposedly over. So, you know, and it centered on my friend Egypt LaBeija, who's a performer who was, this is my cat Jean, they're gonna make an appearance. They are showing up for me all the time. And so, yeah, it's like my activist work really, and organizing work, it has really co-created my cultural work. And to me, I feel really like I'm the beneficiary of all that came before me, you know? So, you know, and I love to keep going back. And so it's like, it's Marsha and it's also Miss Major, but it's also Mary Jones and people who came before. And then I'm also in this moment saying, okay, those things are of such importance, of such you know, beyond value, right? And there's a reason that we don't know, but also what's happening in our now, in this moment in time, us being together right now in the ways that we can show up for each other is of equal importance, right? Like this specific Zoom conversation about taking back the night is also of incredible value beyond value. So I think all of those things are really where I'm at in terms of like knowing that it's really continuing to build off of each other, and like being a place of appreciation to be able to ride that wave.
Yes, for sure. Thanks so much for answering. I know you there are some questions just about your kind of your journey as a filmmaker that you may have also again answered, some that have to deal with like how you got into filmmaking. We heard you say that you were, kind of inspired after seeing Malcolm X, but I know that there are some other questions about like, was there a specific point at which Marsha became your specific focus as an archivist? Like what kind of prompted that? And or were there other filmmakers that you have felt inspired by or have mentored you in your journey as a filmmaker?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with the last one first. So I would say Dee Reese, who directed Pariah and Mudbound and Bessie. I was Dee's director assistant on Mudbound, and that was like my film school. Like I didn't go to film school, right?
Awesome,
like,
awesome. By the way, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that was my film school, and I think for many of us who let me just say for me, I applied to like a bunch of art schools and I didn't get into a single one, right? And I think for many of us who are navigating some kind of like maybe at the time we don't have stable housing, or maybe at the time we're like trying to access gender affirming care, or maybe and that's really hard, or maybe we don't have money for an application to send in. Just there's so many reasons why many of us aren't like in those kinds of educational spaces. And so to me it's really been so profound to reflect back on the ways that filmmakers have showed up in my life to offer support, so Dee is like a really concrete example. And then there's my friend Arthur Jaffa, who is a really talented, brilliant director and cinematographer. He was the cinematographer for Daughters of the Dust, and one of the producers, and Julie Dash directed it. And so Daughters of the Dust is just like the seminal, powerful film in like telling the story of Black life at the turn of the 19th century. And to me, like there's just something that I keep going back to Daughters of the Dust, right? And so AJ is this really talented filmmaker, and we became friends, and then he was the cinematographer for Happy Birthday Marsha. And so to me, and he was, that was the first time I was ever on a film set, was when I was directing Happy Birthday Marsha, and he was really like mentoring me through that whole process. And so the first kind of like film that I worked on was Taking Freedom Home. And so what that really was a group of us, just like us here tonight, saying, let's make a video together about what matters to us. Like, and okay, how do we do that? Like, oh, Kendo, you've done like documentaries and videos before, like, why don't you take the lead? And okay, now everyone like is gonna film a little thing about us talking, and now we're gonna figure out like what's the story, what's the through line, and so that was literally how I got started filmmaking. Was we were hanging out in the group, it was called Welfare Warriors. We started hanging out in 2006, and in 2007 we said, let's make a film about what we're doing, because this is so powerful. We're having such
Mhm.
powerful conversations with each other. And that was the beginning of, my film career. And so
Wow.
with Marsha, I was an organizer, and I was just in so much pain about not knowing a past, and many of us being so navigating historical erasure of our community members and our elders. And so you couldn't Google Marsha at the time, right? There wasn't
Right. That wasn't a thing.
there wasn't a thing. And
Someone else
so
said you're part of the reason why that is able to happen now, which is very powerful.
and it's with that, it's like it feels so, anyone who like a lot of times I'll listen to an interview with the artist, and they'll say, oh, it's just like it's so meaningful that like it caught on, like. And so with this, it's a little different. It's like Marsha, was a real person who did these very profound acts, and they were like really erased and whitewashed out of the history of our community, at the same time as these escalating levels of violence,
Right.
like homicide rates against our community. And so I really felt called to say, like, this is part of what we're facing, is like not knowing where we're coming from and the people who came before. And so I would like, whether it's like the Sylvia Rivera on stage saying, y'all better quiet down, that like I uploaded, or just conversations and that I transcribed, or finding like an interview with Marsha and kind of putting it online, and like building like an archive about her life that felt, it's like I never would have imagined years down the line that this is where it's at. It just continued, and every year it got bigger until, now there's a park in New York City named after her. Like, like everyone knows, or more and more people know who Marsha is, and that to me feels so meaningful. And it's like it's like we're all co-creating this, like we're all big actors in this play, and we're all our own main characters that are helping to weave this tapestry of who we really are, which is like worthy of like knowing that we lived, and deserving of having an easy time moving about, and
Right.
fun, and being playful with what we get to do.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Let's see. I'm trying to think. There's so many good questions here. Do you have any favorite moments in terms of creating over the years? Has there been a moment that stuck out for you?
I think like each work that I get a chance to like create feels really powerful. So over the summer, I made a short film called Joy Run, and it's about these two really powerful athletes that are track stars, and who are Black trans young people, Black trans girls, who were facing a lot of resistance to just be able to compete as themselves in track. And so, then I also made a short called Nothing More Beautiful. And that was about, like reflecting back this moment last summer of like thousands of people gathering around for like Black trans life, and like everything that so much of my work is just feeling like taking back or making back, the tapestry of the night, that like celestial expanse, and like starting to really see each other, show up for each other in it, and saying, oh, like, you're a star, like, no, you're a star. Oh yes, like we're all stars, like in this nighttime.
Yes, you were kind of alluding to this next question, um, like about the ways in which you think your work repositions or shifts power, or even builds power for people, for marginalized folks. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
How do
that's
you see your work doing that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that I am one of an abundance of people who are saying like, all of our fullness matters, right? So whether that's like our aesthetic sensibility, meaning like specifically, you know, um, at the time of Stonewall and still alive in prisons and detention centers and many hospitals today, like if you're a trans person, you can be arrested or put in solitary confinement or penalized or violated by what you're wearing, right? So there were in New York, there are anti-cross-dressing laws which are still alive in prisons and jails and detention centers today. And so that's aesthetic question. That's a question of aesthetics, right? Like, and so like these things, the superficiality, like things that are surface level, we're realizing or remembering or knowing that like these things that are exist on the surface are actually incredibly deep, right? So like Miss Major, who I made the film about, the personal things she's talking about, being arrested for because of anti-cross-dressing laws. And so the ways that we like show up in our fashion expression gets to be as important as like the words that we write, or like the issues of like navigating and getting welfare benefits, like all of it, the wholeness matters, right? Like, and I think that to me is really powerful to see all of us gather together in that knowledge.
Yes. Also, shout out to the Queer Resource Center at PSU. Miss Major is going to be one of the speakers.
Yes, I love that.
So, for the Queer Students of Color Conference. So, just wanted to pub that real quick. So y'all register. If you're interested. There's also people here just like not putting in questions, just being like, gratitude for your message, courage, artistry, humility, joy, more gratitude. The love in your work is palpable and healing and delicious. Gratitude. That's from Marlene. Just wanted to give you that love real quick.
Thank you.
Let's see, a good question. Kind of, I think it was Mira that asked about your abundance earlier, but what are joyful practices that you've taken up in life?
Yeah, that's just so good. I think, one is like during this lockdown moment, I've been taking as many baths as possible. So just like, and they don't even have to be long, just like a 10-minute bath, a 5-minute bath, a foot bath, like that has been so life-changing and affirming in terms of how I feel. Hanging out with my cat Jean, like all of it is like all of it matters and it counts.
Yes, we all need those joyful practices in our lives. So I know in large part, you have been and are still an organizer, prison abolitionist, all those things. Can you talk about perhaps the relationship between creativity, artistry, and transformative justice?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a powerful question. I mean, one of my teachers, both in art and in abolition, has been Kai Lumumba Barrow, who, if people don't know, I strongly suggest people look up Kai's work. Gallery of the Streets is the Instagram handle, but Kai's been doing this work for like 60 years, and part of her artistic practice of showing up for transformative justice or transformation has been around like thinking about prevention, intervention, like reparation, repair work with the aim towards transformation. And how do we use art on every single one of those steps along the way? And so to me, my work really does seek, there was a question earlier about like art and healing. And to me, I think this is a similar one of thinking about how we're showing up with each other to unlearn maybe like the cop in the head or kind of carceral or punitive impulses that we get conditioned to believing that like we can like punish or cage our problems away. And I think more and more people are realizing like the punishment actually doesn't solve the real harm that happens. Caging people and policing doesn't actually transform harmful conditions. And so there has just been like an abundance of resources that have gone towards that work. So I did like a series of videos. This is maybe like 7 years ago about, you know, like what it means to do like everyday abolition, right? And like those moments when instead of calling the cops on someone, we say, actually, like, let me get you a car home. So like you don't need to be driving in this right now, you know, like all of the ways that we're already kind of doing this work already. And like, I think to me, Barnard Center for Research on Women is a place that has been able to really hold and like create in a kind of cultural, exciting, like artistic way through whether it's like Andrea Ritchie or Marian Kaba or you know, conversations with Dean Spade, like a lot of these questions around abolition and transformative justice. So and also like harm reduction, you know, being a big part of it too. So to me, that's like been really important part of my like learning as an artist and as an organizer. And Kai Lumumba Barrow like really played a big part in that.
So good. I think someone else had a question kind of regarding like intergenerational dynamics between LGBTQIA2S plus folks. Just that there seems to be a little bit of a divide between youth and elders, and like are there, you know, strategies, remedies that you see as a way to bridge those gaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in my experience, it's been important to, so in New York, there's an organization called Fierce that works with and organizes, it's like by and for young LGBTQ, queer and trans non-binary people of color. And there's organizations that like center like queer, trans, non-binary elder voices. And I think that to me, when thinking about power, it's so important to, you know, just like on a personal level, think about like who is this space accessible for and who feels like they can show up and their full self. And so, you know, I've spent a lot, you know, I was like a Fierce member way back in the day. And then my artwork is also about like making sure that we're not erasing our elders. And so to me, and our ancestors. And so that's such a great question. I think like we can do it in small everyday acts too. Like just this question of like, who's the space accessible for, access in general, you know, so that more and more of us can show up in our full selves and have the kind of meaningful, like whether it's a conversation or just hanging out or learning from each other and story sharing. So I think that that's a really important question to be thinking about.
Yes, for sure. And I think that maybe ties a little bit into another question. It feels the more that we are connected to elders and ancestors, it might make archiving easier because we're
Right.
in like true relationship with these folks. Someone asked, like, for folks who want to become archivists, how
Yeah.
might they, get started?
That's such a great question. I mean, I think that looking at ways that other people have done it can be fun. Like the Trans Oral History Project like has some and there's like the New York Trans Oral History Project has some great like interviews and people just like recording the stories of people who came before, and I think that is really important work. And then also, to me, it was so meaningful to remember where I'm at, the specificity of where I'm at is worth archiving too, right? And that's what led me down the
That's
road of
good.
the Marsha, filling out her story, the Mary Jones, the like Miss Majors and the J Tools. It's like where you are at is so important. And so it could be like, knowing that the conversation that you're having with your roommate or the person in your pod or in your DMs is like worth remembering and saving.
I love it in your
Yeah.
DMs, the person in your DMs.
Yeah, it's like
Everything is time stamped. So.
everything is timestamped. Exactly. And it's like savoring those kinds of experiences. And the archive is like, it's important, and also there are problems with it too. Like a really powerful, brilliant person, Saadia Hartman, writes a lot about the violence of the archive, specifically how it leaves a lot of people out, and the way that they're included. I'm talking specifically about like Black people and descendants of slaves.
Yes.
It's like the ways that they're included might be really not about the fullness of someone's life. And so, I think it's important for me to remember. That's kind of why I was like, yes, the past is so important. And also like this very specific conversation that we're having right now is really like, we are like expanding on something that has never been expanded on just by us putting our focus on what these issues. And so this matters just as much.
Absolutely. I'm like, oh, I'm loving this so much. Let's see. Let's look in our Q&A. There were some more good things in here. We touched on most of them. I think there was another question about what has been the impact of being able to represent yourself in your communities and name your own narrative. Like, yeah, what has that welled up inside of you? How has that impacted you? Yeah,
I mean, the most immediate and one was like a release of a whole lot of shame. And I'm a person who like for a long time, it would be really hard to like just go outside, right? Like, and so to me, like knowing that there was these powerful people who came before me who maybe navigated some of the same challenges and sets of conditions and made a way out of no way and did it with love and care for each other, and definitely made mistakes too, that had a profound effect on like how I felt about myself, because a lot of these kinds of violences don't just affect like our material condition, meaning like how much money we make, or like they affect how we feel about ourselves and our self-worth and our value. So I think to me it had a profound it was just profound. I clicked back into knowing that we, and therefore I matter, like, and I stopped separating myself out of the group of who matters, Yeah.
For sure. Let's see. We have one from Antwille. How do you think we can get the larger Black community to understand and respect the queer community and its experiences? So, like, I don't know. Yeah. I feel like we're still heavily excluded in our own communities, but I also feel like those of us who show up in academic spaces, they're excluded also. And then it says, sorry. But yeah.
It makes so much sense. And I can always catch myself saying sorry, it's like there's nothing to be sorry about. This question is so powerful and so timely and important. I think that, this is Jean again. Jean, you gonna come over? My cat. It's like dinner time. So, okay. Jean, come in the mix. Thank you.
Jean wants the spotlight. I'm not mad at you, Jean.
Jean's like, where's my... This is Jean. She has her own box, so he's like sitting right next to her. So, I mean, I think that this question about like being excluded in the larger Black community is so important, right? And so part of what I learned from like my friend Miss Major, who's a Black trans elder, she's in her mid 70s. She just had a baby. She is living in Arkansas, organizing that community. Is just the importance of, like showing up for people who already get it, right? And so like it matters to the sense of power that we have of transforming like a larger community, that we are also like not having to do that work every day. So, like I screened Taking Freedom Home, and she did this like keynote in the middle of the film where she was talking. It was at this conference called Critical Resistance 10. And it was in 2008, and we put years and years of work into it. And this very question was part of it. It was like, okay, we as Black, queer, and trans and non-binary people feel really excluded by a lot of the culture that's happening and playing out in these, even like these activist spaces. And she gave this really powerful speech. And she almost didn't give the speech. She almost did like a direct action to be like, we are not going anywhere. We are a part of this. We're powerful. And so, this is something that, like I learned really deeply from her about when it makes sense to push up against it, and also when it makes sense to like FaceTime each other from the bath, hanging out and being like, like I need to telling so-and-so like that, like we're not going to take this anymore, like that kind of like replenishment and being with each other, and that kind of care has an effect on our ability and capacity to shift those larger conversations. So I think that question makes so much sense. It's one that is really on my mind a lot. And it's like, we're doing it together, and this is like multi-generational work. We're not gonna figure it out all at once, but we're really good at figuring things out. We're especially good at figuring things out when we're together and we're feeling good and we're feeling our sense of power and clarity. And I think that to me is something I always remind myself about when I have this question.
Absolutely. Thanks for answering. We'll probably have time for a question or two more. So we know that, like, exposure, representation of Black, queer, and trans folks is important. But beyond that, in what other ways do you wish to honor folks, outside of just like, it's kind of like the question you talked about, like, what do we want that the dominant culture had? Like, of course, like you want to see yourself reflected in movies and things like that. But
Right.
in what other ways, right? Are you hoping for Black, queer, and trans folks to be like honored and seen and all
Yeah,
those
I mean, I think to me, like the little ways too, of like getting some rest, not like having to be on, like taking more naps, being nicer to ourselves, just internal monologue. Like sometimes I'll catch myself being like, just in like right now, oh, I wish I gave that a different answer, or oh, I forgot to say this thing, like, or a different way to do that could be, like you can always expand. There's no wrong, there's just undone. Like we're building off of each answer and each question, we're getting in the momentum, we're getting in the thing. It's okay to take a break, take a 5 minute to 2 minute to 5 minute break, like that kind of thing that you were modeling. You were like, everyone back at like 7:15, like I really think that those things matter so much. They set a tone that we can go slow and we can still get it done. We can do some of it tomorrow and we can still get it done. Like there's no ending point. It's just gonna keep unfolding. And so we can take our time with it, or we can have fun and go really fast, and that's okay too. So I think those are the kinds of the questions that I've been considering a lot right now.
Yeah, it reminded me of that part in the film, where I don't know who was speaking to Marsha. It was saying, "Oh, you guys look so put together. You always look like you have it together." And she's like,
Yeah,
"It's
exactly.
expected."
It's
I'm like,
expected.
exclamation! Like it's
Exactly.
expected. So like,
Exactly.
the part of resistance can be like just being like, I don't care what's expected. I'm about to do
Exactly.
whatever I
That's
want.
what I mean. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. The expectations to be on and
Exactly.
polished and finished, right? It's always there, waiting for us. So I'm into that kind of resistance for sure. Let's see. Let me make sure we don't have any last minute questions. Okay, this last one says PSU offers a course called Queer Feelings. What does it mean to queer your feelings and emotions?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I should probably enroll in that class. Yeah,
I'm sure they'd be glad to have you.
I love that. That's a great question.
Like somebody hook that up.
Yes.
Go ahead and get Tourmaline a free class.
We're gonna pass. Yeah. I mean, I think to me, I think about, right, I go back to that thing about how violence doesn't just affect our material condition, but it affects how we feel about ourselves. And so feeling is a site. Our feelings are a site of resistance and like of coming together to transform that condition towards like away from shame. It felt so powerful when I learned the stories of people who came before me and was able to like release much of the shame that I had gathered up until that moment and move into like the queerness of like pleasurable feelings, right? The queerness of clarity, that like how I am and how I put myself together is just as valid, as anybody else. And so like the feeling of like stability and safety, right? Like knowing that I have some friends who are going to check in on me like when I get home to make sure I got home okay, so I can have that feeling of like ease, and moving about. So I think that's what I think about when I think about that question.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, This has been so amazing. We're so happy that you joined us.
I'm so
And I
appreciative and
and
honored.
we know it's super late. Like y'all don't understand. It's late where Tourmaline is, so we appreciate you being here even that
I
much
feel so
more.
honored.
It's just been a pleasure. I know, folks that got a chance to be in community with you earlier today throughout this event and program. You just shared so much, and we're so grateful. So everyone drop all the emoji like feelings, gratitude in the chat for Tourmaline. Again,
Thank you
thank
for
you.
all of the work that went into tonight, for the
Yes.
interpretation, for the captioning, for the brilliant questions, for the organizing, all the
Yes.
labor that, the months in advance. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Yes, thank you so much. Wow, I'm just like, whoo, you get that like high, all the butterflies, warm fuzzies,
Yes.
all those things. I'm like, yes, feeling good, feeling good. I think next we're just going to have Lily come back and share with folks. Again, any of you who are students at PSU needing to get connected to an advocate, just needing some support, gonna let us know how you can do that. But thank you so much again,
Thank you,
Tourmaline.
everyone.
We just are so grateful for you sharing this moment and taking and making back the night. I don't think Take Back the Night is gonna be like the same anymore. Like since we have this Make Back the Night now,
Take back the night.
it's like
Exactly.
ingrained. Yes, for
Exactly.
sure. For
All
sure.
right,
Thank
y'all.
you
Have a good
again.
night. Thank you.
Oh, I guess maybe I'll just be reading this. Wanted everyone to know, again, if you are a currently enrolled student, the WRC Sexual and Relationship Violence Response Program serves students of all genders experiencing sexual and relationship violence. It's free and confidential, and it's offered as a right under Title IX and our policies at PSU. You can find out how to schedule an appointment and get connected to other resources by going to our website, pdx.edu/WRC. But you can also make your own appointment at that PSU WRC. You can book me site, or you can give us a call. All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been a pleasure. We will see you next year. Who knows? Will it be virtual? Will it not be virtual? Either way, we hope that you join us, and we are grateful that